Going to be extra mom. Oh. Yeah, so, and my husband's going to visit his sisters.
Yes, ma'am.
Kids. Yeah, we're squeezing that in, and then just my daughter's expecting tonight. Yeah, okay. We've been working on our baby shower, so that's gonna be like a big topic. And the bride is not recording baby showers. Oh, wow.
Good. All right, 7 o'clock, so let's get going with the meeting. I think this one will be a fairly simple meeting. There's not a lot on the agenda. It's the September 17th, 2024 meeting of the City of Bangor's Planning Board. My name is Reese Perkins, Chairman of the Board. Other board members in attendance this evening, Vice Chair Ted Brush via Zoom. He was sick due to COVID. Ted, how are you feeling?
On the recovery, getting better, thank you.
Okay, good. Michael Bazinet, Jonathan Boucher, via Zoom, Tricia Hayes, Janet Jonas, alternate member Jennifer King, also by Zoom, also due to COVID protocol, right? But you're not sick.
Not yet.
Good. All right, good.
You don't get it.
Yeah. Reminder to everyone to get vaccinated if you haven't got vaccinated, I guess, because it's going around. So alternate member King will be filling in for member Don Mahar, who is not here this evening. Staff members in attendance this evening, Planning Officer Anya Collette, Assistant Solicitor Grace Innes, and Planning Analyst Brian Scannell. We thank them for the help of this evening. For this meeting. The planning board has multiple roles. You guys know this, but I'm going to put it out there again this evening, but I'm going to skip a lot of the other technical stuff because I don't think we need it tonight. Our roles include the first is review of amendments to the Land Development Code, which typically include either changes to zoning districts or changes to text within the code. Our review of these amendments includes adherence to the comprehensive plan, as well as consideration of applicable concerns from the public. Our vote on these items is in the form of a recommendation to the City Council as to whether the item ought to pass or ought not to pass. The City Council makes the final decision on zoning and land development code changes. The first item on the agenda falls into this category. The second, we serve as regulatory authority for land development permits, commonly known as site plan review. We do not have any permit applications this evening. Considering that that is our agenda this evening, I think I would like to go right to the agenda and skip through the rest of the stuff. If there are any members of the public who are on Zoom this evening, other than board members, we will allow time for them to speak at a time that is appropriate. There are no members of the public other than board and staff here in the room this evening. So the agenda, old business, land development zone changes and code amendments is to amend the land development code by rewording sections of the code to align with the state of Maine statutes for the regulation of manufactured housing. Planning Officer Collette, you want
Yep, I will.
to give us a presentation? Yeah.
So the language that you have in front of you has not substantially changed from when I brought it to you last time. A couple of changes I did make was to reduce the required minimum roof overhang to 6 inches from 12 inches, just based on my observations of what's common around Bangor currently. I also put in a stipulation that any manufactured homes in URD 1 or URD 2 would need the egress door on the front. I did talk with code enforcement a little more about that, and I looked at what we have in parks currently, and it is possible to put a door on the side facing the street, on the narrow end, I mean, and so I did decide to include that. And I also clarified the skirting requirements so that, you know, if you have a gap between the bottom of the unit and the ground, you do have to put skirting. And so those were the only changes I made after, and I did just want to mention as far as the covenants question, as I summarized in my memo, covenants are really just created when an entity is selling a property to another entity. They can put in covenants if they want. So if somebody wanted to do something related to manufactured housing, they could, we advise speaking with legal counsel if somebody wants to do that. But as far as the city goes, there's really no way for us to do that. The only way to apply something broadly across the city is a zoning ordinance, which the state law would apply to, so.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Bless you. Board member questions? Do you have any public on Zoom? No other board members, that's it. So no public. So I will open and close public comments, seeing no public here to speak and nobody on Zoom. Any further discussion by the board before we go to motion on the proposal?
Chair?
Yes,
I
member
actually
Jonas?
have 2 questions.
Yep.
The first one is in section B, part B, section B, number 1, part B, it talks about exterior siding that is residential in appearance, and it lists a bunch of things. It does not list fiber cement siding, and I wanna be sure that that is considered also residential in appearance.
And got our masonry veneer, it would be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, we don't limit it to just those.
Okay.
And so it does allow for some subjectivity when it goes to code enforcement. So,
I'm sure it would be fine, I just
Yeah.
wanted to double check because.
yeah, it's not limiting it to those, so it's possible that that could be included.
Because it's not really masonry, because it's not stonework, it's fiber cement siding, so it more looks like siding, but it's actually a much better insulator.
Yeah.
Of that in my past background. That was my first, and then the second, if it's okay, I don't really understand the difference between saying it has to have a permanent foundation and then requiring skirting, because to me, those seem to be mutually exclusive.
I wish I could explain in a little more depth. I just was talking to code enforcement about foundation requirements for manufactured homes. There's what's called a floating slab, which I guess, it's like a slab and then you have some kind of permanent attachment to the bottom of the manufactured home, and there can still be a gap between the bottom of the home and the slab, but it's still considered a permanent foundation. I don't have, so
the wheels are gone, basically.
yeah, essentially.
And it's on stilts or something,
May I dive in on that?
please.
Yeah, so it's required that the wheels and the axles get taken off as well as the tongue. And you can't even insure it as a home without that happening. And then typically it's on concrete blocks. And then typically there is some sort of a strapping commonly installed to attach the steel frame, which is the thing that this thing travels over the road, sitting on, attached to the concrete foundation. So that the strapping secures the steel frame to the foundation.
Okay.
In essence, a lot of that is driven by hurricane rules.
And that was my third, be anchored.
Yes,
question
so
was about
that,
hurricane
those anchors, all of that is all required. It's required by HUD, it's required by insurance, it's required now on all new homes, mobile homes,
Uniform
manufactured homes. So the skirting is separate from that. The skirting just covers that space that's underneath there where all those things are. The steel frames and the straps and the concrete blocks and that sort of thing. But with skirting, you can remove a piece and still crawl underneath there and fix something if it needs fixing, or get at the plumbing if you need to get at the plumbing or whatnot.
Thank you.
Help, yeah. Member Bazinet.
Doesn't foundation imply that there are frost walls and not a slab?
No.
It does not, the
It does
two are
not.
interchangeable?
I mean, not exactly interchangeable, but a foundation can be a slab. And that's true with homes too, not just with
Okay,
manufactured homes or mobile homes.
so it does not, foundation does
Does not
not
have to
imply
have a frost wall.
frost walls? Okay.
Okay. Seeing no other board member comments, I'm gonna comment on this. Wasn't sure if I was gonna comment on this now or until we vote, but I think I'll just comment on this now. I expressed my concerns with this item previously when we talked about it at the previous meeting. I sort of feel like we're being forced to do something that I don't think we should be forced to do. But because state law requires that we do this, I'm gonna vote yes on it. And I certainly appreciate the staff's revisions to make it more palatable. I think that does help. And so I'm gonna vote yes, kind of under protest, because I still feel that it's not really the right way to go about adding housing. I don't like the idea that we can plop down a mobile home almost anywhere. So that's just my opinion on this. And seeing no other board member comments, I would be happy to take a motion on this proposal.
This is supposed to be ought to pass, right?
Generally, we want to do an ought to pass rather than an ought not to pass. That's right.
Oh, what I mean is like a recommendation. Am I
Yes.
thinking about this right? We're recommending to the city council as ought to pass. Is that how we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, was that a second?
Yeah, was that a second?
My daughter just walked in to my
That's
office while we were doing this. I could try and do a motion with her in the background and see if it gets disrupted.
All right, so Member Boucher. the
So
motion.
I move that we recommend to the city council as ought to pass an amendment to chapter 165 of the Land Development Code, City of Bangor, removing and or rewording sections of the code to align with the state of Maine statutes for the regulation of manufacturing and manufactured housing.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote on this one. Member Bazinet?
So Chair, just clarification, you're saying that no matter how we vote tonight, and no matter what the city council adopts, the state is stating such that we cannot make any changes?
Basically, if city ordinance differs from the state law, it puts code enforcement essentially in an untenable situation where, you know, our code's telling us no, and then state law is saying yes. And it could open the city up to liability if we tell somebody no.
Okay. Well, like the chair, I don't agree with it either. I'd like it to be in the minutes that I'll vote yes under protest.
Thank you. Member Boucher?
So are you asking for my vote? Yes.
Thank you. Member Brush?
Yes,
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member King?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have a unanimous vote with some comments. And so Planning Officer Collette would take that vote and those comments to the city council on
Yes.
Monday. Thank you. Other business this evening. So we got through that. That was really the big item on the agenda this evening. There are a lot of other sort of little items. The first one is a discussion of the changes to the comprehensive plan. Planning Officer Collette has that laid out for you in your packet, and I'll let her kind of talk about it as much as she needs to this evening.
Okay. So basically what we're proposing is mainly to amend the comprehensive plan to align with the state's feedback from their consistency review that happened late last year. They had some requirements and some suggestions for that. The requirements were that we put in the plan a minimum percentage of housing that was going to be affordable, mainly subsidized housing. So the city currently has roughly 10%, and so we set it at 15%, so we have a bit of an increase, something to strive for. And then the other requirement was that we put language in there that we're going to direct at least 75% of the city's investment to our growth area, and that we review our capital improvement plan on a regular basis to make sure it's aligning with the comprehensive plan. The suggestions that the state had was mainly in regard to clarification on environmental aspects of the plan. So in the land use inventory, for example, clarifications around endangered species that are present in the city. Some of the actions for clarification were, what are we going to use for sea level rise projections, for looking at land uses in those areas. And then besides the state suggestions and requirements, we do need to put in an action to align with our new Bee City USA designation. We just basically have to say, we're going to do these things like pollinator plantings and educational efforts to align with our designation. So we just put in a new action item for that. And because we're amending the comprehensive plan, it has to go through the same process that adoption of the original had to go through. So we had to put out a notice, and then a month later, we had to wait a month for it to come back to you. So it would come back October 15th for the formal public hearing, and then it would go to council.
Right, thank you. So, Member Jonas wanted to speak on something that she had with regard to this item, but first I want to say, we're not voting on this evening. So we would vote on it some point further down into the fall.
Right.
Member Jonas.
I just wanted everybody to know that my husband and I are active both with Bangor Beautiful and with the Downtown Bangor Partnerships Beautification Committee, and which are both organizations that have been working to promote this designation as a Bee City. We're donors, we're volunteers, but we are not employees, and we receive no compensation whatsoever. Our role is strictly as volunteers and donors, but we wanted the board to know that we have that affiliation for your consideration.
Thank you. Staff want to comment on that?
Yeah, so number one, the city council's already adopted that we become a Bee City USA. So the decision's made as far as that, and this is just to comply with our designation. But also, it is a comprehensive plan, so it's a little different than like a zoning ordinance change or development where it's affecting like one particular property. It's affecting the whole city, so everybody here really has an interest in the comprehensive plan, so I wouldn't, I'm not sure it's exactly possible to have a conflict of interest with a comprehensive plan, so, yeah.
Still good to bring it up. Always better to bring it up.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any other board member comments on the comprehensive plan changes?
I have one. I'd like to. Can you give any background on how you, the calculations you used for the affordable housing, if it's based off of rental exclusively, or if there's more to it, and just some background on that, because sometimes that term is used different ways.
Yeah.
In different settings.
Yeah, so for that number, we were specifically, it is mostly rentals. We're specifically looking at numbers from Maine State Housing Authority on the units in the city that they subsidize or have provided funding for. And then we also took data from our assessing department on other subsidized housing that's not affiliated with Main State Housing Authority. So it's really just subsidized units.
And is it based off a median or an average of the median? You know what I mean? Like if it's 40% of the median income for the region or something like that?
No, I mean, the state probably uses income to determine which units they're going to subsidize or, which developments they're gonna fund, but we didn't look at, income when we were looking at the numbers. We really just took data from them, like, here's all the units that this organization provided funding for that are located in the city. And these are the total number of dwelling units in the city, so this is the percentage of the total.
I'm sorry, more questions on it. And is the 10% of other rental units or of the total housing stock?
Of the total housing stock. Yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions, other board member questions on this one? Seeing none, I had a comment, simply fine tuning. I felt more like there's an item in there regarding soils testing.
That was just a clarification, just something that, I can't remember which state department suggested it, but if we're going to be encouraging urban gardens, then we should also encourage people to get soil testing done for any contaminants before they do.
Yeah, which I think is probably a good idea. I will say, I know that from doing this previously, that soils testing is difficult and expensive, particularly if you don't know what you're looking for.
So I know from experience, I guess expensive is subjective, but I tested my soil. I sent it to the, I think it was the University of Maine, just a simple, like, what are the nutrients in here? And they also do lead testing.
Yes.
For an extra fee.
Yep.
But it was like $30 total, I think.
Right.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's true. If you start looking for, and more what I'm thinking is, if you start looking for, because we had, for example, one client that they wanted to know, there were processed blueberries in part of their land, and they wanted to know if pesticides had been put on them.
Okay.
And without knowing the pesticide that you have, you can't really test for it. That kind of thing gets really pricey because there's thousands of pesticides, and when you start testing for that sort of thing,
Right.
it just gets enormously expensive.
I think their intent with that was really the lead, because that's the main contaminant with urban soils.
True.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was my only comment, and that's not a strong concern.
Okay.
Any other comments on the comprehensive plan issues? I'd encourage you, if not, board members we have time now, right? We can still look this stuff over and think about this.
Well, it has been advertised just because we needed to, there's a 30-day gap of, you have to advertise at least 30 days beforehand. So it is, if there are changes, I think we might have to re-advertise again and then
Okay.
push it back further. But if you do, if you have changes, then we can do that. It's just
Okay.
up to you, so.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna move on from that item unless anyone else has anything else, and I don't see any hands up on this one. So I'm gonna go to the adoption of notices of decision. I was gonna put them all together, but at advice of council, I'm gonna break out the Aroma Joes because that one was a little bit, there was more of a back and forth in there. So putting together adoption of notices of decision for the Ohio Street flag lot, which was Brian Hatch, 28 Hayes Street, which was Maine DVEM, and that was, if you forget, that was the airport band building project. And then 154 Sunset Ave, which was the second phase of that Bangor Housing Authority senior housing over on Sunset Ave. And I asked, do board members have any concerns with voting those three projects all as one, the notices of decision? And seeing no hands up, I would look for a motion on approving the notices of decision on the Ohio Street flag lot, the 28 Hayes Street and the 154 Sunset Ave. Member Brush, thank you.
Mr. Chair. I move that the board adopts the notice of decision for the Ohio Street project of creating flag lots, that we adopt the notice of decision on 28 Hayes Street, adopt the notice of decision for the Haskell Road project, and
No, not that one.
not
That one,
skip that one.
second. 154 Sunset would be the third, yep.
And notice of decision for the 154 Sunset Avenue.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Jonas, thank you. So a roll call vote on that. And so everyone can vote on that with the exception of Member King, because you didn't vote on those originally. Thank you. So a motion, we have a motion and a second. A roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have unanimous approval of the notices of decision for those three projects: Ohio Street Flag Lot, 28 Hayes Street, and 154 Sunset Avenue. And so now, just as a separate item, just in case anyone wants to discuss this further, has any other concerns or comments on that, I would look for a motion to approve and adopt the notice of decision on Haskell Road, the Brennan Development LLC, which is the Aroma Joe's project. Member Jonas.
Chair, I move that the board adopt the notice of decision for Brennan Development's project at Haskell Road, map lot R70-031, as presented at the last meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have unanimous approval of the notice of decision on the Haskell Road Brennan Development LLC project. I did want to ask, and I probably should have asked it before we voted, but my notes weren't in the right order. Did we get the engineers' reports on those projects?
We did.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And so we need to move on to the meeting minutes for September 3rd, 2024. And so do board members have any comments or questions on the meeting minutes from our last meeting? Seeing none, I would look for a motion on approval of the meeting minutes from September 3rd, 2024. Member Basnet?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve the Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024 Planning Board minutes as is.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Looking at Assistant City Solicitor, I can use Member King for the minutes. So I will include Member King in this vote. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member King?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of the meeting minutes for September 3rd, 2024. So that leaves us with other comments and questions. I had three things on there that I wanted to bring up, kind of minor items, but still this is a good meeting for this sort of stuff. We never really get feedback on city council meetings. And last city council meetings, the last city council meeting in particular, there were some items that the planning board dealt with that went on to the city council. And then there was some public feedback, let's call it, that you all don't always see. And so I was going to suggest if it would be all right with Planning Officer Collette, if we could add to the agenda an item where you just gave us a real brief comments on, for example, the manufactured housing. You're gonna take that to the city council on Monday, and with some comments that we made tonight. And so no one knows what happens to that unless we pay attention to the city council meeting, which I certainly would recommend you all to watch the city council meetings, but at times they can be tough to watch. Would it be possible to just give us some feedback on that sort of thing?
Yeah, I can give you an update on what council decided. In regards to the comments that you were talking about, I would be hesitant to add those because they were in regard to a previous project that had been voted on. And I think there could be issues with talking about that at a meeting when, there might be advertising requirements if we're going to talk about a land development at a board meeting. So that could be a little dicier, but I can certainly provide an update on things you've sent to council that they then vote on. I can definitely do that.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any feedback?
On like public comment stuff?
Yeah, if the public comes to the council to talk about a project that the planning board previously voted on.
Yeah,
It's public.
yeah, it is. It's a little weird because you're not really reopening the public hearing or anything,
Yeah.
right? But you are bringing up a comment that's about a development that you've already approved, so it's a little funky. So I would have to look into it a little bit more before saying one way or the other, but yeah.
I just know there's been, and it's happened with like Historic Preservation Commission as well. Some people are upset about certain decisions, and they want to talk about it at the meeting, but I think it's a due process issue because not that you're reopening the subject, but you're talking about an application, even though a decision's already been made, you're talking about the application without the applicant knowing and being there, and, without other interested parties having the ability to comment as well. And it could just raise some issues.
We're not talking about anything, we just want to know the outcome.
Feedback.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm talking about a separate issue. With regard to like a vote that the council made, yeah, there's no issue with that. I can update you on that. But if I were to tell you, well, these abutters came forward to council and talked about this development that you've made a decision on, and that could open up discussion with you, that's what I'm more concerned about.
but we would not have a discussion, correct?
We shouldn't have a
We
discussion.
would not,
Right.
we couldn't.
Yeah, okay, so if no discussion's had about it, that might be a little different.
Yeah, and I was gonna say something along those lines too. The thing that struck me most actually with those comments was not so much the project, but the fact that a comment was made directly that maybe it was to the effect, that I'm paraphrasing, I'm not trying to quote anyone, that we either weren't doing our job or we weren't listening. And I think that kind of feedback, whether true or not, is feedback we should hear. I think that's worth listening to. I don't always like to hear it, but I still think if the public thinks we're doing a bad job, it's good we know it. And so, may I say, since I brought up this sticky subject, as long as city solicitor in consultation, the planning officer in consultation with the city solicitor's office comes up with something to give us feedback, we would like feedback. I think that would be welcomed.
Yeah.
Member Jonas had a question, I think, earlier.
Oh, actually, Planning Officer Collette, mostly, I think she addressed it when, my question was, or my observation or my thinking is that it would be very helpful to know if council decides something that isn't necessarily what we recommend. In particular, I would be very interested in that, because it's public record, you're right, I could go watch it, but it might be kind of nice to have a heads up to go look for it.
Yeah, I think it definitely makes sense to come let you know the outcome.
Are the meeting minutes published on the site for
Yeah,
council?
they should be, yeah.
There's actually that was one of the other things I was gonna speak to, because with everyone on Zoom this evening, it got brought up going to Zoom if you're not here. And I just wanted everyone to know that if you do that, you can do it by going to the calendar on the city website. If you go to the city website and look at the calendar and look at a meeting, say the planning board meeting for this evening, and then click on that calendar item, up will come a page that will show you the agenda. It will show you how to Zoom the meeting, and if the meeting is completed, it will also offer you a transcript, which is pretty handy. So you can watch the video if you want to, but a transcript is a little easier to sort of make your way through to what you want to look at without having to sit through what could be 2 hours of, people talking about things you have no interest in. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. And then the last item I wanted to bring up kind of in other comments, neighborhood, is, and I guess I'll just let Planning Officer Collette speak to this. I had tried to start the conversation, I don't know how many of you remember, but last year when we began the year, this year when we began the year, we had some bylaws given to us, which I had never really seen before. I think they sort of got discovered or rediscovered at some point last year and shared with us. And I thought that was awesome. I then went to a MMA meeting or Zoom or training, I can't remember which, where they kind of talked about the bylaws. And I got some examples of other bylaws from, like, the town of Falmouth has a nice set of bylaws, and there's some other places. And I took the bylaws that we had from last year, which were old. So they weren't really right in some cases, and I made some adjustments to them. And since then, we've gotten busy. I really haven't done much with them. And so I'm gonna let Planning Officer Collette kind of take it from there, because you're doing something at this point.
Yes, we've been sending revisions back and forth with legal and our development director. We're getting, I think, close to tying those up, and as soon as we're done with those, we're gonna send them to Reese. And then the process is, once those are finalized, we put an agenda item on just to let you know that it's coming, and then it would be the meeting after that where we would bring the bylaws to you and the board would discuss and vote on those.
So we have some updated bylaws coming. Part of why that, to me, was important to bring it up now is that we have a new board member. And I don't know how many of you know about Member King's background, but she has extensive background. I don't even know what her educational experience is, but she's got extensive background in city government. And so I think she understands how planning works in a very intimate way, even though she may not be familiar with how our meetings run exactly. But the bylaws kind of spell all that out. And so I felt like it would be nice to get the bylaws updated so that as new members such as Member King come on board, we have this document that helps guide us in our meetings and how we do our meetings. Okay. So that was the last thing I wanted to bring up. And my goal would be that by the end of the year, we would have these updated so that we could share them with new members who typically come in at the end of the year. So.
I did have one thing I wanted to talk about.
Please.
We're good? Okay.
Yep.
Just an update. So next month is the American Planning Association designated National Planning Month. And so as part of that, we're bringing a proclamation forward to council for them to proclaim that October be Planning Month in Bangor. And as part of that designation, we're going to do some public outreach activities to educate people about planning, And then try to get some input, but also just let people know that we're embarking soon on the land use plan implementation. And we hope to have some public meetings, some neighborhood meetings finalized by early October, and we would be pushing that out to the public. And we'll, of course, update you too as soon as we have that finalized. But we're planning to go to the Sidewalk Art Festival on October 5th, which is a Saturday, and then October 6th, the Farmers Market. So we'll be having some of that information, and then just some fun activities for people to do. One big thing we're planning is to create a photo survey, so people would take a picture of their favorite and then least favorite places in the city, and then where they like to trick or treat, which is valuable from a planning perspective, but also we thought it would be fun since it's in October. And so in the middle of the month, we'll combine all of those, we'll get a new survey out, and people will vote on, you know, the pictures people have submitted, and then at the end of the month, we'll release like the top 3 in each category. And I think it's valuable for the land use plan implementation because you get to see, you know, what are the building types and the sites that people really appreciate about Bangor, and vice versa.
This is great.
Uh,
Exciting.
Yeah, and Brian had the great idea of printing out like certain interesting graphs and maps from the comprehensive plan and putting them around City Hall. And so we're going to do that as well and have them up for the month of October. So just wanted to let you all know that's happening.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we had some unflattering comments. Less than flattering comments.
Yes.
So I'm trying to get to the site right now to see the minutes, and it's not allowing access. Is that open to the public?
They will be. I don't know when the clerk usually puts those online. They may, actually the minutes probably have to be adopted by at the next council meeting date, which is Monday.
Yeah.
So they'll probably be available after next Monday.
I'm just going under the general heading of meeting minutes, so it's not specific to dates or meetings.
The transcript should come up though,
Yeah, it should, yeah.
not the minutes, the transcript. I've already seen that, so I know that one.
Are you able to see it on your?
I've got to look. We can do it after the meeting if you want to, but.
I'm just curious as to what was,
Yeah, let's
what had
look into
taken
that.
place on that.
If you have time to watch the meeting though, I can't remember the chain to get there from the city's website, but you can go on YouTube and just look up City of Bangor, and then you can find the council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's always going to be a percentage of people that might be upset with us from time to time.
Yeah, you can't please everyone. You certainly can't, and that should be our goal. You know, we have to stick with the city codes, and we say that every week for a reason, comp plan, the city codes, but I still think public opinion matters, and it's good to have some idea of what people are thinking, especially when it's spoken in public at a city council meeting. So, Member Jones?
2 things. The first one is, which city council meeting was that? This last one?
It was the last one.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
So it would have been,
Tonight.
this is on the 9th, so it would have been the 9th.
Okay, and then the second thing is just an observation that just because we didn't vote the way they wanted, doesn't mean we didn't hear them.
Yeah,
And I'm pretty sure I know which one this was, and we heard them several times.
yeah.
But, you know, we're here to interpret the code. So that's, you know, so, yes, we should know, but we also
Yep,
have a position
yep.
in that regard.
I'd like to take a minute just to thank our chair for doing that every meeting, just spelling out what the constraints are of the planning board, what the role of the planning board, like who these members are and what, you know, what they're, that we're all just fellow residents and things like that. I think that really does a good job of spelling out the situation and sort of sending a consistent message that I think that helps, I'll say educate the general audience about what's happening here and who's, you know, who we are and what we have in front of us. So I appreciate that. That's been a recent addition the past year or so. I think it's done a lot of good. So thanks, Chair.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll second that.
Agreed.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's a tough job.
Well, I think it's a struggle for everyone. I mean, I know it was for me when I became a member. You know, we sit here in order to, in part, listen to public comment. And yet, sometimes it isn't pleasant, sometimes it isn't relevant, and sometimes it's with anger behind it. And I get that. But we still need to hear it, even if we don't agree with it, but that's not how we make decisions. And so it's a hard balance, because as much as the code is wordy, there's really nothing in the code that says what we do with that information once we get it, except for make our decision based upon code and the comp plan. And I appreciate you guys' comments. I'm just gonna keep saying it as best I can the way I say it so people understand. And hopefully we don't have too much of that anger and frustration from the public. But when we do, hopefully we can tamp it down by just explaining how things are done, because I think that's the best way for people to manage through the process. It's not an easy process either. And I sympathize with people that come here, because at times I'm certain they're frustrated before they ever come through the door. We were laughing about it at the beginning of the meeting, but bureaucracy, right, sometimes can be crazy difficult and frustrating. So anyway.
Can I say one thing?
Sure, certainly.
I think it's very, very helpful for the planning department to really gather all of the information long before it comes to the planning board, because the memos and the notes really do help bring up the, really just fine tune it to where we all just have to look at everything and just go through it and know that trust that it's been reviewed thoroughly through the engineering and the planning department. It's very helpful.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Any other comments? I mean, this is our quick, easy meeting. It's 47 minutes at this point, so if there's no other comments, going once, going twice, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting, and thank you guys for being here tonight.